Hello, I'm Dr. Brenda Juarez Harris, and I'm the instructor for EDUC 6910. And I would like to introduce the course to you and our Module 1. This is for second block. I taught this course first block, and I would like to make some adjustments based on what the scholars and I uh, learned together the first block. They were so gracious and so wonderful. I have taught at other universities, but every university has its own unique personality, its own vibe, if you will. And every student is unique and has their own interests. And so I really do try to get to know students. I love being a teacher, I love being a teacher educator. And students are truly a joy. So to do a good job, I feel that I need to be responsive to you. And particularly, our course is called 21st Century Master Teacher. So I'm not saying that I'm a master teacher, but I do feel like it's important to try to model what you expect students to do. So, as I mentioned in some of our emails, that we've corresponded a little bit before the course actually started, this course is going to be revamped. I'm not sure exactly what direction the department or the university or the college is going to go with this course, if they're going to try to incorporate it into another one. I'm not sure, but I do know that the goal is to make graduate education as responsive to your needs as possible, and therefore as meaningful in terms of what are your interests, your goals, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, how can we do a better job of supporting and serving you. So I think one of the first places that we could probably start would be with the revamping the title of the course. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it as far as 21st century master teacher. I hope you won't think that I'm the woke police or something, but I have reasons for why that makes me a little uncomfortable, but you'll have your own insights on that as well and be able to come to your own conclusions. And maybe even we can make some suggestions about how that even the course title might be revamped. Um, so that's kind of the idea, is that we're going to approach this course. It's 7 weeks long, and that's a short amount of time to do a lot, particularly with a topic like master teacher. So the way that I interpret that is that it is moving beyond like a good teacher. We have a lot of teachers. I do remember being a first year teacher myself and just thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I went to college for this, and I really kind of struggled to get my feet under me. Even though I had done well as a student teacher, once it was my own classroom. I was a elementary teacher teaching second grade, and fortunately I was out on one of the little portables away from the main building, and I wasn't happy about that when I first started teaching. But as the year went on, I ended up having a wonderful experience with my students, and we kind of had our own little space out there, and it gave me a little bit of space to explore and kind of find my own rhythm. And then the next year, I was transferred to the other side of the city, And that was another situation where I was like, what happened? I had a lot of English language learners in my classroom, and I really felt like, I wasn't prepared. Even though I had been a good student in student teaching and in my teacher preparation, when I actually became a classroom teacher, I did not feel prepared for some of the realities that I was facing as a classroom teacher. And so I did notice, I was very aware of the teachers around me, and I would see what was happening in their classrooms. And you may have had this experience too. I noticed that the first year I was in at this new elementary school, there were some cute bulletin boards out there. For those of you who are secondary teachers, you may not think as much about bulletin boards as we do. Particularly I did early childhood quite a bit, so bulletin boards, I loved them. And I noticed cute bulletin boards, and I would be like, wow, that is so cute. And then the next year, I saw the same bulletin board, and the next year, it was the same bulletin board. So I noticed that there were certain teachers that were having their first year again and again and again. And so instead of kind of growing and changing and adapting, they were doing their first year over and over and over. So they were a first year teacher maybe even 25 times. So you have teachers like that. And then you have other teachers who do improve. It takes about, 2, 3 years to really kind of get your own rhythm. And so there were teachers that would kind of become somewhat effective, or even you might call them very effective. What do we mean by effective? But the idea, the way that I take it for a master teacher for the 21st century, is that public schools were actually called common schools when they were first kind of conceptualized, and they certainly did not go pre-K through 12, right? Back in the early days of the United States, Thomas Jefferson's notion of schooling for the common man and Horace Mann with the great equalizer, the idea was really, give males, they were the ones that they were thinking about, give them, a good 3 years of reading, writing, arithmetic, and that should kind of even the playing field, right? And so you have industrialization happening, and you have schooling. The calendar is around the crop rotations, right? You need children out in the fields and on the farm to help take care of and bring the crops in. And so you couldn't have classes then. And so the calendar for school was in the winter when there wasn't, too much farming going on. So schooling, before the 21st century was kind of this industrial model of efficiency, conveyor belt. We're going to batch process children and youth and kind of move them through the grades. And so that was kind of the thinking that went along with modernization and the Industrial Revolution. And so that was the idea. Where, now today we're in more of a, post industrial society, and we have a lot of service economy, and we're in a knowledge economy. So our factories and such, that's, you don't have people who are as much anymore working, 25 years in the Ford factory making cars or something like that. You don't have that as much. The coal mines, all of these things that used to be the way that people would make their living, have all kind of shifted into this different economy. And so now, especially with a global health crisis, we've really seen how the digital divide has can't come into play in rural areas with access to fast internet speeds and the equipment and the technology that you need for online learning and for um, everything. We don't even know what to do without a smartphone or a smart TV, and so now we're cutting the cable and we're streaming, and so the banking, shopping, where these brick and mortar things of industrialization and that previous era, this is all kind of shifted more into a knowledge and service economy. And so the skills are a little bit different. And the knowledge base is just shifting exponentially, from what it was, every few years now, the knowledge base is changing. So, what students are being prepared for in schools, their careers are most likely not even in existence right now. And so that's the way I'm understanding 21st century is it's a different set of skills than we had in the industrial revolution era of modernization and modernity. Now that we're in kind of this like quote postmodern, very digitally based environment and economy, it's a different skill set. So that's how I kind of see, what are we doing to prepare students to be, as teachers, we're preparing these rising generations to be citizens who are fully participating in our republic. We are a democracy, or at least that's what we like to tell ourselves. And so, as part of being a republic that has representation, we feel in our national story, we talk about, every citizen, uh, every person, one vote, and you have to be able to make informed decisions. So, and to be able to participate. So, being able to participate in society as an upstanding, good citizen, that goal hasn't necessarily changed formally from when Thomas Jefferson and Horace Mann were thinking about the common school for the common good. But how we get there and what that means has maybe shifted over time. And we've seen schools have to take a role where sometimes schools have been kind of conceptualized as the means to produce workers for the economy. Is that all that we're doing, though? And we have, certain kinds of education that is about preparing workers and employees. And so that's a purpose of schooling that has emerged over time. So we have kind of these competing ideas about what schools are supposed to do. And then teachers are supposed to be the ones that make that happen. And so we have where we have teachers being kind of the representatives of society, they're employees of the government who are coming in, and we, as the public, we entrust you with our children and neighbors' children, and you are kind of given charge of spending the time to develop these young people who will become our next generation of leaders. So we've got, the 21st century skills, and then the educators who need to make that happen. And so we have good teachers, and then this idea, the way I take it, is for master teachers would be the way that I see it. Oh, excuse me. Um, the way that I see it would be that being a master teacher would be that you're not just good, you are exceptional. So that's how I am seeing that idea of the 21st century master teacher, even though I'm not like super okay with the idea of the word master, just like for gender reasons. It makes me a little uncomfortable. Words carry freighted meanings. Like when I say to you, don't think of an elephant, I'm pretty sure that each of you are thinking of an elephant now. So our vocabulary matters because when we use concepts and terms, they come freighted with all these histories and meanings, and they invoke particular mindsets, whether you want them to or not. When I say something is beautiful, our society, no matter what you think about it, you do have your individual taste for sure, but our society also kind of puts out there on billboards and magazines and the way people interact and talk, there's certain ideas about what a society would say is beautiful, and that does change over time as well. Even if you look at the history of the United States, like what was deemed beautiful for women and women's clothes and even men's clothes like changed over time. Eventually, gold buckles on shoes kind of went out of style. So, there's something about what the individual tastes are and how those tastes are shaped by the larger group, where even my thoughts, if I'm home alone thinking, my thoughts are still social because my language is social. And so, I hope you will give me a little bit that you won't think, oh, my instructor is the woke police. Definitely not. I just am aware of the way that language is freighted with all of these meanings. And hence, I like to use the word scholars with my students. Not that I think there's anything wrong with the word students, for sure, but I feel that historically, students have been kind of put in this passive role, and I think as scholars, then you kind of see individuals' agency and their ability to act on their environment a little more. And it reminds me to interact with you in an I thou relationship rather than an I it. There was a quick little story from one of my student teachers when I was at the University of South Alabama here in Mobile. And many of our public schools are 97% to 100% African American. And so our student teachers need to go out into all of our public schools because, especially, I'm sure you know this too, new teachers tend to get placed in the toughest schools. And some of our schools are very tough here in Mobile County Public Schools. So, but really, I honestly do believe that all children and youth can learn. And so I was trying to put my student teachers in places where it was considered tough. And people would say, oh, that's a zoo over there. The kids will run wild. But you always had these exemplary teachers where other teachers were good or even not good. These exemplary or quote master teachers would be able to take the same students and really excel with them. So it wasn't the children or youth that changed, it was the teacher. And so the principal that I was interacting with, he was telling me of one of my student teachers who was in his building, and this young man was so excited. He was a young white man working in a school that's all African American and working class here in Mobile. And the student teacher, he said to the principal, who's African American educator, he said, I'm so excited. I can handle these kids. And the principal very gently said to him, we don't handle students here. We interact with them and we find a way to connect with them. We don't handle them. And it was a very enlightening moment for this young man. And I'm so happy that he was not defensive or upset about it, but he took it as a learning moment. And he has since gone on to become a very successful classroom high school teacher because he took that moment to learn. And that was the principal was teaching him an I thou moment. Martin Buber is the one who came up with that. He was a Jewish pedagogue who talked a lot about pedagogy and the way that when we interact with others, and he was coming, as a survival of the context of Holocaust. And he talked about how there had to be some healing. And if we interact with each other in an I thou relationship, that's very different than an I it. So when this young man had said, I can handle these kids, he was very excited because he had gone in with a deficit view of Black youth, particularly working class children. He had seen them as dangerous. And where did he get these idea that children from working class neighborhoods who are Black are dangerous? He didn't think that up himself. He got that idea out of society. It circulates that. And we see that because of the way that, for example, young Black men are killed by the police and so on. We see that they're kind of framed as dangerous. So this young man saw the youth he was working with as it, and he thought he had to handle them. And so the principal was very gently getting him to shift into an I thou relationship. Do you see the difference there? And so that's that is really the essence of what I want to explore with you in this class. I want it to be a very open dialogue. And I know for me as the professor, I'm in the higher institutional position where I have the institutional authority, and you're positioned in the lower status one, as far as even though you give me a course evaluation that does influence me and my career trajectory, I am the one who puts your final grades in, and it thus puts us on an unequal power equilibrium. And so I have the responsibility, not you. I have the responsibility to make the context open, that you feel safe enough that you don't feel threatened or like your grade is in jeopardy if you give your actual opinion and you think, well, I don't know if she'll like that. It's risky for me to say that. But I hope you will learn to trust me and know that I don't enjoy grading. I have to do grades because the university requires it of me. a practice that precedes you, it precedes me, and we use it for, quote, accountability. And I say that loosely, because that's the official thing. But honestly, it's your learning that is important to me. And you personally, I always try to keep in mind that even though I might not enter a physical brick and mortar room with you, I still am able to benefit from interacting with you, and hopefully you benefit as well. That's my goal, not to waste your time. And I would like it to be as open of a dialogue as possible. And so I'm trying to kind of even that out, help work to make you feel safe, that you can actually trust that I won't um, be offended by your comments, even if you don't like something that I say, or I don't like what you say, or whatever. That I'm going to be professional with you. I'm going to try to gain your trust with that, and so that you do feel you can share your actual viewpoints without being penalized. Um, so I would like it to be educative in that sense, where it's not I'm the sole driver in this, but that we're actually literally, this isn't just a slogan on my syllabus, but it's actually authentic, where I'm learning with and from you, and hopefully you're learning and growing with me and with each other as well. That would be my hope. So, I think the kind of to help kind of set the tone and the pivot that I work from, just to try to build understanding with you, is a lot of times, and this was me too, when I first became a classroom teacher, I was always looking for some magic bullets. And I think because the way that education is set up, and the way that we have the No Child Left Behind and other like policies and practices that are put in way above our pay grade level, mine, yours. It's the legislators are putting some of these in at the state level and at the national level. And I'm so encouraged that I have a couple of friends that I went to graduate school with who are now faculty at Westminster College in Salt Lake City, and people who are faculty at the University of Utah. And I see, because they're on my Facebook page, I see that a lot of educators at every level in Utah are going to the Capitol. They're making their voices heard. They're participating. And that is so exciting and so encouraging to me, because we don't have that as much here in Alabama. Um, Teachers kind of get treated in a little, and I know this isn't just in Alabama, but oftentimes because of the feminization of our profession, a PhD in education is a whole lot different than a PhD in, say, geography or chemistry or political science. So, kind of the College of Education, we were kind of one of those applied schools that were the stepchildren coming into the higher education, and we bring in a lot of money for the university, so they let us in, but we've always kind of been the ugly stepchildren. And then with because of the United States being a capitalist society, um, in capitalism you need your workers to be engaged in the economy, and so who isn't contributing to the economy? You've got the old people and the young, and so somebody's got to take care of them. And so the you can see, like, as far as what does society value, if you're working with the elderly or the youth, it's generally not a high status, high paid job. And so there's hierarchies even within that. But historically, really to work with the children and the old people, I mean, that was something that if you were kind of an outcast of society, if you were seen as a criminal or something, as kind of society's unwanted, well, we'll put you with the devalued people that aren't actually the workers in the economy, the children and the old people. So you got to do something with them. And so, with teaching too, a lot of times the idea of you've got a teacher proof curriculum where we don't actually want teachers to actually think. We kind of treat them as gently, like as if they're recovering alcoholics, and we're scared to let them have a little bit of responsibility. And so that's not just Alabama, that's all over. You just see it in greater or lesser degrees, and I'm so encouraged that I see so many K-12 teachers who are out there on the Capitol steps, and they are raising their voices. They're participating in unions. They're speaking at events where policymakers and legislators are there. And I'm sure that even some of you have been part of that, because I've seen that already at Southern Utah, where people are very involved. And I'm so excited about that. And I'm so wanting to kind of help as put my energy into that as well and contribute to what you all are doing. And that's just so encouraging. So because of that, though, because teachers it's been a feminization of our profession. Our profession is still, if you look over the United States, you will still see that teachers from working class and middle class backgrounds, they tend to be white women, they tend to be English speakers. This is who our profession is overwhelmingly. Do we have teachers of color? Yes, we do. But when we look at the trends of who makes up our profession, you see that the overwhelming majority are still white women in teacher education and also in the K-12 schools. So this isn't a criticism, it's just that's what it is. And then when we teach in teacher education, I'm talking about myself and the traditions in teacher education historically, because it's been kind of, you can't trust women too much. We couldn't trust them with the vote. We couldn't trust them with property. We had, this idea of the women were too emotional, things like that. You couldn't trust them to be good decision makers. Hence, you have kind of all of that baggage there where with the profession being feminized, we've put a lot of emphasis into this teacher proof curriculum. And then we wonder why we say, well, why are teachers always looking for these magic bullets, and why are they looking for these golden nuggets? And they're looking for the right tool to implement into their classroom. And that was certainly me too. So what I'm going to suggest is that in this class where we're looking at 21st century master teachers that it's not that these exemplary teachers who are able to excel with the toughest situation of students and communities and parents, they're still successful. What is it that they're doing? It's not that they have a magic bullet, okay? So when I was a new teacher and I had been I didn't transfer myself. The school district transferred me. I was teaching for Salt Lake City School District, and I had been teaching kind of in the heart of this city at Emerson Elementary. And most of the students I had were kind of middle class. I had one student of color. I had one student who had an IEP. And then the very next year, being the low person on the totem pole, I was sent to teach across the bridge on the west side of Salt Lake. And then I had a very diverse classroom. I had a few African American students. I had who were raised by their grandparents. I had a lot of children who identified as Tongan and Samoan. I had children who identified as Vietnamese. I had children, a lot of children who were economic refugees from Mexico, and they were first generation and second generation Mexican descent children. And some of them, their parents did not speak English. Some of them did not, some of my students did not speak English. I had students from rural areas of Utah, out in Duchesne. I had even students from southern Utah that were living in Salt Lake. So I had a range of students. And on my first day of teaching, third grade, not second grade, where my students had been reading Stone Fox, writing in their little journals and all. The first day of class in my new school, one of my students, little Miss Jessica Salazar, she drew a picture of herself giving me the finger. In her journal, and she quite clearly told me that they didn't know how to write. And I did find out she was correct, that even some of the kids couldn't write their first or last names. So I was a brand new second year teacher, and I did not feel prepared. So I had been in South America, I had been in Mexico. I was quite sure that the problem wasn't with the children. I was pretty sure it was with me, that I didn't know how to teach well. And so I started looking for the magic bullet. And eventually that was what brought me to graduate school. And I loved graduate school. And so then I had encouragement from a professor. And he said, you know, you would be good to do a doctorate. And I came up with all kinds of excuses about why I wasn't good enough being a farm girl and having nobody in my family that had gone to college and so on. And he just didn't listen to my excuses. Every excuse I came up with, he would say, so if you fail the GRE, take it again. Mm-hmm. And he just would not give in to my excuses. And he would make me think about solutions. And he would say, you know, why is that an acceptable excuse? He just did not, he had high expectations for me and never accepted less than my best, and made me redo things, which I had never needed to. I wasn't a student as an undergrad who needed to study much. I didn't even have to, quote, attend class much, and I would do well. But this actually required me to put some effort into it, and he knew that I could do better and demanded that I do better. And so with his guidance then, I had to stop making excuses about my rural background and my working class background, and just get busy and feel like, you know, if I'm going to do this, let me do it. So that was really the journey that I took in trying to look for a magic bullet. And I finally understood. It took me a long time, but I finally understood that there was no bullet. That teaching is an expression of yourself. And in order to teach, you have to be teachable. And so if I am not learning from my students, then it's almost a guarantee that they're not learning from me. So I have to have this kind of I thou relationship. The moment I shift into an I it, and don't think for a minute that that can't happen like within a conversation. I might start feeling defensive. I might start feeling, do they not value all these hours and time that I put in for them? And I shift into an I it, and I start treating you like as if you are an object. I can handle you. And then, hopefully you would feel like comfortable to say to me, you know, um, I have expertise too, or however you might want to say it. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Well, I know you're in a more vulnerable position, and I do try very hard to um, be very open to criticism. I raised 6 children, four of whom were boys, and then I have a stepson and a stepdaughter, and they will let you know in a minute when you are off the mark. And so I have developed a pretty thick skin. I live in an all black neighborhood and work with young people, and they will let you know in a minute when you're off the mark. So I feel like I have developed skills about uh, being able to take criticism. And I hope that you will learn to feel comfortable doing that with me as well, because you do bring a lot of expertise as well to our conversation. So when I say that we're not going to be looking for a magic bullet, it's not that I'm saying that we don't need good practices. I know that we do, but it's not really about that. If I can make that, as the educator and the one with the institutional authority, I'm responsible for this. In our situation, I am responsible for it. When you go into your own classrooms, you are responsible for it because your students are in the lesser power position as compared to you. So you are responsible for it. So when I say that we're not looking for magic bullets, I don't mean that in a sense to, you know, belittle or put anyone down or anything like that. What I'm doing is I'm trying to pivot. And the way that I think about this is kind of this notion of the parable of the babies in the river. And I promise you that I'm going to wrap it up with this, okay? So the babies in the river, I'm sure you've heard this before. Maybe even I've told you this. I teach a lot of classes, so I forget who I tell what. Um, but so with the babies in the river, just if you imagine yourself um, on the shore of a river and you see a baby coming on this raft, no life jacket, and being the good citizen that you are, you're like, well, that's not safe. No life jacket, no helmet, no adult supervision to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. You go out there and you bring that raft in and you get that baby out of the river. But wouldn't you know it, here comes another baby in the river. And so you're like, oh my goodness, well, okay, sit here. You put this one down and you go wade back out and you bring that one, this baby out too. and now you got two babies, but you see another raft is coming down the river. What are you going to do? So you get out your cell phone, you have your signal, even though you're up in the canyons, and you call all of your friends because you're very popular and you have a lot of friends, and they have a phone tree, and pretty soon you have this whole crew out there, and you have developed this whole efficient system. Some people are bringing the babies out of the river, others are checking them over for injury, others are getting them in fresh diapers, others are tending to any kind of sunburn if they're hungry. So you have all these different stations. And there's something really missing from this story, right? You're all working hard. You're all doing important work. Whether you're the one bringing the babies out or you're the ones bringing the babies back to the city and putting them in care, whatever you're doing is important work. And you're all being very efficient and very effective at it, and you're doing good work. But you're not pausing to ask one super important question, right? And I know that you know this question. Why are the babies in the river, right? And so you can be so effective and so efficient at what your station is, whether you're the one taking them out of the water or you're the one making sure they have clean diapers. You are so good at getting those diapers delivered to your station. And you are excellent at it, and you've developed such a network. Or whatever your position is, you are excellent at it. But because you didn't really handle the underlying issue of why are the babies in the river in the first place, it's not that your issues don't matter, but more that you haven't taken care of the root of the problem. And so once you get to that, to the real issue, then you're going to have a whole different perspective on it. So that's why when we're like looking for these different strategies, oftentimes they're very wonderful. And they're important. And I don't mean to belittle that at all. Like we'll have these new things, like one thing that I value very much and I feel like it gets overlooked is mindfulness, particularly if you have grown up like I did, where there's a lot of I'll just say in my own context growing up, there was a lot of emotional immaturity. Like it was more reactive rather than intentional and thoughtful. And I was well into adulthood before I discovered that I don't have to just blindly react with whatever emotion comes over me, but I can actually take a moment and redirect my emotions. So children obviously can benefit from that too. We've just been 2 years in this brutal pandemic conditions that have been hard on everybody. And so, do I feel like skills like that are important to be taught in the classrooms? Yes, I have nothing to say against that. But the idea that any of these strategies or techniques are going to solve the issue of why are the babies in the river, no, they're good, they're very important, but they're not getting at that little thing. And over time, like when I was student teaching, you still had a lot of remnants of the open classrooms. Like that was something that had been the generation before me. And now we have mindfulness, and you think about these things. Well, that's great. And you think about, well, what can we do to help with that situation? I don't have any problems doing that, but I also want to get at the root of it. So if we're saying we know for a fact, and it's been researched and documented, for example, that about in the fourth grade, girls start going on a trajectory away from math and science, even though they start kindergarten and pre-K equally as excited about math and science. And we know that math and science professions tend to be the higher money earners and so on, while teachers or women go into the pink collared, right, which are the lower paid ones, even though women are now heads of households in the US more than men are. Not to mention we have different kinds of family configurations, right? So if I'm like cheerleading for girls and I'm like, I want you to be proud of being a girl, I have no problem with that. That's great. If that female wants to identify as a girl, no problem. So we have to be careful about who we want to cheerlead for, because that's a whole onion in and of itself that you keep up peeling, right? And so I have no problem with that. But if you didn't get at the underlying issue of why is it that girls are moving away from certain professions, um, then you are taking good care of the babies in the river, but you haven't gotten to address the issue of why are the babies in the river, okay? So it doesn't mean that we're devaluing any of us, like myself. No matter what you did, I wanted to be a teacher. So you could cheerlead for me, you can tell me and teach me how capable I am in math and science, and that's good. And maybe because society kind of you think about how we're socialized about girls roles are this and that, that probably would have been very helpful for me. But I'm kind of one of those people that I felt at an early age that I had a quote calling for education, and kind of even maybe even a gift for it. I don't know if my students thinks that, but I did feel that way. So I'm not devaluing or thinking that we can't have anybody, and especially those who identify as female, in the so-called pink collar jobs. What I am saying is that people who identify as female should have equal opportunity to choose any profession. And like my partner, he's an engineer. He worked as an engineer for many years, and they are just now starting to get, and it's still fairly new, where they had female engineers in his area. And so, it's not that I want to make all who identify as female in as away from so-called pink collar jobs, but just that the options might truly be open, where they can think about these things. A lot of times, like even for myself, I always saw myself as a kindergarten teacher. And I loved being a kindergarten teacher. But I never imagined myself as a high school teacher. And I wish I would have, or somebody would have said, well, even if you end up go ahead and choose the early childhood, why didn't you just consider that? Because turns out I've had a lot of opportunities in after school and other settings where I've actually worked with secondary and middle school kids. And do you know that that was a complete surprise to me, that not only did I enjoy them, but they enjoyed me too. And so that was something that I never imagined. I just saw myself as a early childhood. And where did I get that? Where did I get like that as a oldest female child, I should be a caretaker, and I was good at it. You know, I'm the oldest of seven. I learned to be very good at caretaking, and liked it. I ended up having six of my own children and then two stepchildren, so eight children. So does that make sense? So in our course, we're going to kind of trouble all of those ideas about what are the new techniques coming in, not to devalue or demean them or to say, this too shall pass, even though a lot of them do. If you've been in education long enough, you see bandwagons come and bandwagons leave. But this is why I love working with undergraduates too, because their excitement and enthusiasm, sometimes when you've been in education a long time, you can get a little bit cynical because you see these things kind of come and go. And with the newcomers, their just genuine joy and love of and excitement is contagious, and I love being around them for that reason, because it kind of it mediates a little bit some of the cynicism that those of us who've been around the block a little bit, we might pick up a little bit on some of that. I feel like brand new teachers too. I just love every opportunity to be around them because they bring so much to our profession, and they're really the new blood that we need. So I'm so grateful for them, particularly as teaching has become so much more test based. When I was in the classroom, it had just started to really amp up in testing. So I still had a lot of space to kind of create my units and do a lot of things, where nowadays, testing absorbs a lot of time for teachers and learners. So, I'm so grateful for people who are sticking with the profession and those that are still coming into the profession, because um, we need you and the profession needs you, and you do a wonderful service. So in this class, then we're going to explore what does that mean, this 21st century master teacher. When I say exemplary teachers, that's what I mean, is what this idea of master teacher, exemplary teacher, those teachers who are successful even with the children and youth that other educators keep failing with. And we do see that schools have not worked very well for whole groups of kids. But these exemplary teachers, and I did all kinds of research on exemplary Black teachers, we do know that there's a whole genre of these teachers who, even where other teachers keep failing, over generations, the failures have kind of stayed enduring. There have been teachers who have been able to work in really difficult circumstances. They're different difficult circumstances than what we're facing now, but they've been difficult nevertheless. And they've still been successful. So that's what we're going to be exploring, is what is that? And then exploring, what do you want to know about that? What does that mean for you? You bring experiential and official published knowledge already, because you are an educated person who knows a lot already too. So let's put all of that kind of in the pot together, and let's dig in and explore our topic. We want to be dream keepers, right? Langston Hughes has a poem about what happens to a dream deferred. And as an educator, that's why a lot of us came into education, because we love and believe in the power of knowledge, and we're invested in rising generations, and we want to be dream keepers. I don't really know. I've been in education a long time. I really haven't run into people who want to be dream wreckers. And yet a lot of teachers are dream wreckers, no doubt about it. If you ask the students that they work with, and as a mother, I have seen dream wreckers, and I've had to physically steer my children away from dream wreckers, because I didn't want my own children's dreams to be wrecked. And so if we don't want to be dream wreckers, which I don't, and I know you don't, we want to be dream keepers, we have to figure out, okay, what is this about exemplary teaching? What do these exemplary teachers do? What is this I thou relationship? How do they build that? And since teaching is an expression of myself, what the way that I embody it, you can't do it, because for better or worse, you're not me. Thank goodness, right? I know you're glad that you're not, because you're you. You are everything you need to be. You are enough, just the way you are. And when you walk into that classroom, you are enough, and your students are going to benefit from you, because teaching is an expression of yourself. So that means we have to take these principles of exemplary teaching, and we have to learn how to embody them in the way that is right for us. So when I think about principles, I'm thinking about, if you think about the Judeo-Christian tradition of, like, quote, the Ten Commandments, and the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. With the Old Testament, if you're familiar with that Judeo-Christian tradition, in the Old Testament, it was like you could take this many steps on the Sabbath. Anything over that, if your oxen was in the mud, you could pull them out, but it had to be before sundown, and so on. So there's a lot of specifics about it. Then when the New Testament comes in within this tradition, then then it goes more principle based. And so that's kind of what we have to think about with this exemplary teaching. What are these principles? Why hasn't exemplary teaching been the norm in schools? So why do we have good, mediocre teachers, or even ineffective teachers who are dream wreckers? And okay, yes, teacher education, people like me have to be responsible for some of that, for sure. But at a certain point, if we're in the classroom, we have to kind of take charge and say, well, whatever happened before, I'm in charge of me now. What am I going to do in my classroom? What am I already doing that is so productive and effective that I'm making connections with my students? And what can I do so that my teaching is exemplary? Teaching is just a lot like housework, it's never done. And so that's the most wonderful thing and the most difficult thing, because no matter how long we've been in education, we keep on growing. And hopefully, it's a lifelong journey for each of us. So, thank you, thank you, thank you for being in this course. I'm so excited to be with you and to learn with you and to get to know you. Okay? So thank you again. And I'm going to go ahead and shut this off. So have a great rest of your day.